like that shirt, by the way. I have two Mickey Mouse shirts. Anyway, all right. Hello. Welcome to the Artificially Intelligent podcast, where a white cracker, honky American comedian, that's me, speaks with his black African American person of color musician friend, Barrett Antar Goodwin. That's you, the silent one. Are you going to say hi, or are you going to leave me hanging? Oh, are those gang signs? Did you just throw gang signs? Should we be intimidated?
Yes.
Are you being a frightening black man?
Yeah.
And today, a guest on the program. This is Mr. Brandin Lea, founding member of, and former singer of, and possible future singer of, because there's a lot of buzz going on. There's anticipation and crossed fingers and people praying to, I suppose, Xenu, because everyone's a Scientologist now. If nobody realized that, you should join Scientology. It's the one true religion. A Flickerstick, Brandin Lea. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Everything is well here. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. I know we spoke a little before recording, so I'll just give an overview to anybody tuning in for the first time. 2 points of information. As I said, former, hopefully future singer of Flickerstick. Just a quick bio is Flickerstick was entered in and won the only season of Bands on the Run on VH1. Got signed to a major label. I believe it was Epic. They had their album recorded, Welcoming Home the Astronauts. Fucking fantastic debut album, just a great album in general. And then, as happens with the entertainment industry, sensibilities shifted. At the time, I believe Britney Spears was huge. NSYNC was selling 1 million albums a week, and they went, rock and roll, we're not sure if we're interested in that anymore. And then you got wrapped up in a multi-year legal kerfuffle where you could not release your own album. And all that finally came to pass, where you are now, after over a decade and plus. The album is on all streaming services. It can be on YouTube. It can be out for public consumption. And I couldn't be happier, because I'd always wondered what happened to it. And hearing the story, heartbreaking. And probably from your angle, just, I'm surprised you have any hair. I would have pulled all mine out in frustration. So how much of that is correct and incorrect? And then we'll move on.
That's that's pretty good assessment of what did happen. 9/11 had a lot to do with it, but that's kind of a long story we could get into if you want. But our album basically disappeared for 17 and a half, 18 years. So it was only released for like maybe a year and a half, and you know, with all the stuff that happened, it's now being re-released after. Oh God! I mean, just all the litigation. So basically, we're getting to have a second release of this album, and it's going to go to vinyl, just because there's been a lot of talk over the years and on social media about why they can't buy the album, what happened to it, and so since it's going to be our first anything on vinyl, we decided to release it finally again. So it's available on iTunes and. Just about everywhere else that it should have been available this whole time, but it hasn't been. So it's kind of like I don't know. I guess people are interested in it again, and that's surprising to me, but it's very welcoming, and I'm excited about it. I'm sorry that it was, gone for almost 2 decades. So that's where we're at now.
Well, let's continue down that line of thought, because what you just said I found very interesting, and maybe it's artistic humility, or I think Barrett gets the same thing. I get it occasionally. Someone tells me, like, oh, that joke is really funny, or I like that thing you did, and I sort of have a knee-jerk reaction of downplaying that compliment. I'm not sure I accept compliments well. The way you just said that it was very surprising to you, welcoming but surprising, it struck me as odd. Because as I was just gushing over it a second ago, it is a goddamn start to finish fantastic album. It's a rarity in that, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. We all remember the day when an album would come out and they'd release a single and everybody would buy the album, and it turns out the single was the only good song on that album. Well, Welcoming Home the Astronauts is a start to finish just immensely listenable album. So the fact that you found it strange, like, oh, people still like this, what do you, there's no easy way to ask this, but do you not get wrapped up in the impact your music has on others, or is it just something you didn't think about, or were you so consumed by the fact that you had this legal mess for 17 years that just the idea that holy shit, I actually touched people didn't occur to you?
You know, I've always, it's something that I've always struggled with, because it's very much like a dichotomy. It's very, I always say, you know, it's the cliche, can't see the forest through the trees kind of thing. Like, I do understand, and I'm very grateful, and always like, just, I don't know, kind of dumbfounded that people really did like have an attachment to the record. But at the same time, it's maybe I just don't take compliments that well, but it's also something that you know, it's hard for me to understand, because, you know, it's something that I did, and it's odd to listen to yourself. It's odd to,
Yeah.
you know, it's a strange feeling to try to hear it in the same way as someone that isn't involved. Like, I can hear other people's albums the same way everybody else will hear mine or anybody else's, but to hear those things when they're said to you, it's like I do get it, but it's also something that is hard to wrap my brain around, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing to hear. I've heard worse. Not everybody is as kind as you are, but a lot of people have been in it. And I think the reason why I say it's surprising is that, going back to 20 years ago when we first made the album, it was our debut record, and we didn't expect anything like the you know, the amount of attention that it did get, and the positive reaction by many that it did get was surprising to us, because we were young, and we didn't really know what we were doing or what we were capable of, I guess. And to be talking about it 20 years later is just something that it's awesome, but it's still kind of a shock. I don't think that'll ever go away.
That's amazing, though.
That's a good feeling, but
it's totally amazing.
I think when you were speaking, what started going through my head is the thing with music, as I find it when I listen to it, the attachment you feel is you wrote a song to try and express something inside of you. Right. And then for me as a listener, when I hear it, depending on the song, be it about love or joy, or you hear the song and you're like, holy shit, how did this other person, this stranger that's never met me,
right,
describe my emotions or say something that I wanted to express but couldn't in the way that I would express it if I could, if that makes sense. I think that is what creates the attachment. And maybe at your end, it's a bizarre feeling to know that you put something out there that so many people like responded to, in the sense that, wow, he's actually saying something that I feel inside of me. And that probably is in a way bizarre.
I think, yeah, I know. I think that's pretty dead on. I mean, like, when I listen to a record where I feel that as the listener, it's the same feeling, and it is. But like, I guess it's just it's always been strange to know that. I guess strange isn't the word. It's just, there's a disconnect almost with like the fact that it happened when I'm on the other end. Not that I'm not capable of doing that. I mean, I would hope as a songwriter that does work, but it's just like, when I hear that it does, or at a level where we're still like, you know, people still talk about it on you know, 20 years later, it's something it's awesome. It's amazing. It's so amazing that I can't really understand, like, it's hard to go like, okay, that's great. You know, it's just, I don't know. I can't put into words why it's so difficult to explain. I mean, like, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, and a lot of me wishes that, you know, we weren't having to re-release this thing. So it's I wouldn't say it's bittersweet, but it's I don't know how. It's like I wish we were talking about a new album, but not in a bad way, not in like that album doesn't deserve what it is, because that album has a story behind it and it being, you know, gone for so long. So I do get it and I think it's great, but it's like it's an album that happened 20 years ago, and it's like now it's getting to be out there again. And so I'm just happy that people even want to listen to it still. That's enough for me. You know, like I think it's great.
Well, I have two questions. One, what did you guys do musically during the 17 years that you weren't releasing that record? And are you guys, if you reform, and I don't know what happened with the band being together, not together, things like that, but
He only listens to black people music.
Right. Yes.
Rap.
Do you guys do you think you have another album in you with the band? Do you think, is that something you'd be looking forward to making a new record with the group and releasing that?
I mean, I don't know. I'd like to get to well, let me start at the beginning of the question, I guess. In the 17 years, well, we continued to be a band for another 9 years after this happened, like after the release. So we released another major label or another full-length album called Tarantula a couple of years after. That was on a different label, so that didn't have the problems of this one. This one,
yeah, to interrupt, that has always been on the streaming services. That has been available.
Right. Like everything. And then we have a live record that was, the live record was Astronaut basically done live. So that record was live. So what happened is that people could still hear the songs, but it was, you know, not the original album. It was on this live record that was just kind of, it was done in Dallas at a hometown show. And like, that has always been available. Tarantula has always been available. We had the DVD out, and those have been available, but this album hasn't been. And so as far as making a new record, I mean, you know, I would love that, but I don't know if the guys would be ready for that. I mean, I don't know if they're it's hard enough to try to talk about reuniting for one show. So I would love for all that to happen. But in my life, you know, some of the guys' lives are different now. You know, they're older, and a lot of them are fathers. I'm not. So,
well, I mean,
I don't know.
One thing I've heard, I think it's an apt comparison when it comes to bands, is like marriages fail all the time, and that's two people trying to get along, and then you have five motherfuckers that have to live in close quarters and agree on things, and it's amazing they don't implode every single day.
You know, when you're younger and you're like college age, and you have like a guy trip, and there's maybe 5 to 10 of y'all, and y'all all go to, you know, Cancun or wherever it is that you might travel to, and it starts out, it's a blast, everybody's pumped. Day 1, day 2 are really great, and if you stay long enough, by the end of the week, even there's a couple of dudes that are coming back, black eyes, something has happened, you know, like, you know, they're not speaking, or, you know, who knows, but it's, you know, not all the time, but I mean, that's just like in a week. But like, you're right. when you're traveling, like, and here's something that also, maybe those that haven't traveled, like with a band, or I know you traveled doing your comedy and stuff, but like, you know, when you're a tour bus, it's y'all 5 guys as in band members, but then you got like 5 other crew guys. You might have 12 people in that tube going down the freeway at 90 miles an hour, you know? And so there's a lot of guys to fight with. And so, you know,
yeah.
And then you throw a bunch of booze and other substances in the mix, and people are away from their families. But yeah, people are always like, I can't believe, you know, y'all had, or not just us, but, you know, bands in general that tour. It's like, how do y'all, why is it so hard? Like, why? Y'all should be having fun and all this stuff. And you have a blast, but there's all kinds of things that could go wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't it?
You know,
I mean, this happens all the time, but wasn't it Cream that would arrive to the venue in separate limos, get on stage, barely make eye contact, and then leave in separate limos. And
oh yeah, no, I've heard that about Cream. I mean, there's a lot of the bands, but it's funny you're missing Cream because Cream was young when they did that. They only did one album.
Yeah.
They were like 23. So they must have really hated each other.
Right.
Yes.
There's a lot of bands that do that later on because, you know, they all reform later and they're doing it for the money. Everybody's got their own crew, their own bus. They don't have to talk. You know, like,
well,
I hear about stuff, but like, you know, for Cream to do that, they're a trio, by the way. It's like you can't get along with two other dudes. Like most bands, like, you imagine Slipknot has like, you know, 35 members or some shit. Like, that's a lot of fighting. Cream's got two other guys.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
And
like you can't make a threesome work. Why you get paid all this money? But you know, whatever.
you talk about that. I've heard stories. I think Velvet Revolver was one band where Duff had his own manager, Slash had his own manager, Scott had a man, and
I'm not surprised at all.
when they would talk about it, they would just fight. They would just have managers call one another instead of sitting in a room as humans discussing shit. So, you know, Duff's manager would contact Scott's manager, who would say Scott wants this. I mean, yeah, it was a big, huge mess.
No, no, you hear that stuff. It's bizarre to me. Like, I know when Audio Slave, I read this.
Same thing.
Audio Slave was forming, like, Chris Cornell said something like, they asked him about, like, how's the talks going for the new Audio Slave record? He goes, well, I don't have it. I mean, it's just all my lawyers. It's just lawyers talking.
Yep. Yes. Heard that same exact story.
Y'all got to a level where you can't call each other and go like, dude, come on, are we gonna make a record or not? Like, you have to have litigation.
Yep.
I don't know that life. I know that, like, hey, fuck you, let's fight over this, and then let's keep going, and then, like, hopefully it's keep going, and then, you know, we'll see what happens. But
okay, bizarre question then. You know that life. Do you think it would be easier to graduate, for lack of a better word, to the point where you're like, I don't feel like fighting with him. I'm going to call my manager lawyer and have my manager lawyer fight with my drummer's manager lawyer.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of that could be washed. Sure, you know, you don't want to fight all the time. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I would like to think that it would come to a point where you could just, oh, well, you know, what, all get along and not have to worry about all that. Yeah, that's, of course, everybody would want that, but like,
well, Rodney King wanted that.
we had more problems. Really, we had more problems with, like, the circumstances and the contracts than we really had with each other. Like,
yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because
but we weren't that dysfunctional. We were dysfunctional. We were dysfunctional as, like, if all five of us were one person. Like, you know, like when Bill Burr did that rant on Philly. Yeah. If Boston was one man, right? So that's kind of like how we felt. Like, we would fight with each other, but at the same time, it was like, you know, we all represented kind of one person of, like, DFW almost to a point. That's how we felt. And
you against the world.
It was, yeah, circumstances that were out of our control a lot of times, or contracts that made us fight more in the end. But, like, most of the time, despite popular belief, we got along pretty well until certain things made it where it was until things got turned upside down. Yeah.
Well, that brings to mind two questions. And I'm not sure if we'll get to the second one or if we'll forget and move on a different direction. But I want to drift back to the importance of the album for a second, because you talk about contracts and changing sensibilities. And if I'm not mistaken, the A&R guy that helped bring you to Epic then left. And once the person that's in your corner, once your cut man is gone and you're just in the ring by yourself, the company doesn't care. Because I think something that the general public does not understand, I think the general public, or at least I know I did when I was much younger, you'd look at the music world or the entertainment world, movies, whatever it is, and you think it thrives on creativity and talent, when in reality, it chases trends. So in the 80s, hair metal is big. So they're just signing everybody and saying, wear this. Warrant, you need to write Cherry Pie. Jamie Lane hates the song, but it gets shoved down their throat. Then Nirvana comes along and every record label goes to Seattle. Then in the late 90s, Britney Spears hits. And the next thing you know, it's boy bands and Christina Aguilera. And then, and it just, so it doesn't set trends. It chases them, the organic. So you have all these people, I'm going to use a poor choice of words here, but a cult that fucking loves your band and the album and could act as a Kiss army for Flickerstick, and the record industry just didn't give a fuck. And looking at that from the outside, you have to be just stunned. Like, this is so short-sighted. Why are they doing this? How does that feel from the inside? Did anything I just say, was that incorrect, or does it hit home?
No, that's you're totally correct. Especially like with, I don't think your average person, like, that's not a musician or in the business at the level of like record contracts understands, like, when you're A&R, your A&R is basically your tie to the label, and an A&R is so important to a band because the A&R that finds and signs you and brings you to the company is just as vulnerable as you are or more, because if something goes wrong with the band, or the band doesn't do well, or they're not getting the right doors opened, like the A&R can easily get fired. And sometimes they fire the A&R and they keep the band, which is what happened in our case, actually. But that was for not his fault either. That was for other circumstances. But you're right. But you're speaking correctly, I think, within the model of how the business was 20 years ago.
True.
Totally it was that way. Nowadays, I can't even tell you. I mean, I know now a lot. I don't know how it is in the comedy world, but like, you hear now stories about, like, is there even need for A&R guys, or the A&R guys find bands by social media likes,
right,
or however, like, it's almost like Moneyball. Like, they don't really have to. Before, an A&R attached themselves to a band because they generally felt like they liked the band. They liked the band. They wanted the band to do well because, it would be a band that they would want to hear. And now, I've read and I've heard that, you don't necessarily you could bet on the numbers. You could even be an A&R or that role in the business now where you might not even hear the band's music. If you think about it, you could do it by numbers. You could go, that's a good bet. Look at this. I don't even know.
Yeah. And comedy is like that. And Barrett and I have talked off air. I don't know how much on air, but that's the way it is. They look at how many followers someone has, and they get handed positions. In comedy, there's the opening act, the middle act, and the headlining act. And I have come across headlining acts that, like, I've heard, like, oh, they have 50,000 Twitter followers, so they're going at the top of the bill. And the comedian themselves was like, I can't do 20 minutes. I've never done 20 minutes. And I'm like, I have 6 hours in my back pocket and you can't do 20 minutes. But you're right. I did describe the old school way, and now it is literally, but they're still chasing trends. They're chasing what's, quote, hot.
Oh yeah, no, I don't doubt that at all. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, one trend that it seems to have stuck is that, at least from what we see, is that rock is not very viable. It's not the genre you want to bet on in the last however many years.
Yeah. Well, I've read about that. What I read was that they don't like rock bands or bands because bands write what's in their heart, whereas with a pop star, they have a songwriter that writes a hook, gives it to the pop star, and they just market that. So
Absolutely.
They're easier to deal with because they're just sort of a figurehead, whereas a band will fight for what they believe in, and the record labels aren't interested in fighting. They're like, look, we just want you to put out this. It happened with Kelly Clarkson a while ago, years ago, where she wanted to be an independent artist and write her own songs, and the album bombed. And then she went, all right, I'll let songwriters write it for me. I mean, she went right back into the fold.
Yeah, Clive Davis, it was like her third or fourth record where she said, I want to actually write my own material. And Clive Davis was like, are you crazy?
Yep. He said, that was a bad idea.
I don't know if she demanded and they let her do it, or if she just did it and said like whatever. But it wasn't. I don't know. Now that's a different animal though. But you're right. First of all, you're right about why the labels don't. I mean, that makes sense. It's logical. And if you also think about it, that's why the bands that have done well, and they're still bands, but like it's like Black Keys. How many people are in Black Keys? 2. White Stripes, there's 2 people, and that's not only.
White Stripes didn't make it, didn't they break up too?
Oh yeah, these are the last ones we have to talk about. So,
right.
No, but I'm saying when you have 2 people in the band, it's probably easier to have these discussions if there are those than if you have 6 members that are all sticking to their guns. But that's totally right. Like what I said this in another podcast about, it's country music has not taken a hit whatsoever. Like country music is as strong as it's ever been. And okay, I mean, it's not exactly the country that we remember as, kids when we were 9, but it's still
because it's not good.
Right. So now when I hear the young country, which I hear a lot, I mean, I live in Texas, some of it is like a genre that my band was in, but they have twangy vocals and maybe like a violin or fiddle or whatever. However, it's more rock than ever.
Really? I haven't heard that because I hear the brand that's called Hick Hop, where it's country rap, and I've heard that, and I do not like that. I might like rock country because I like classic old country, but I went to a state fair because I'm white trash, and that's what white trash does. It goes to state fairs, and I heard a modern. Okay, let me just tell you this story really quick. It had been a long day, and I was laying on the grass, and the lights go down, and the music, and everybody stands up, but I'm still laying on the grass, and I hear the music start, and I start going, "There's something wrong there," and the guy starts singing, and I'm thinking, "No, there is something absolutely wrong with this," and I said, "That's not live. That's not music." And I stood up, and on stage was a guy singing. That's it. No guitar, a guitar player and a drummer, but the drummer wasn't drumming. He was just it was all electronic beats, and he was doing this hick hop thing I heard. And I'm listening, I'm like, okay, I hear horns, I hear strings, I hear a bass guitar, I hear all this shit that's not on stage. And what's that?
No, you're right. No, I absolutely.
But it wasn't live music. It was a up and coming country star that had a song about 2 a.m. and fine for him, not for me, but it wasn't music. It wasn't a band. It was pre-recorded, and then he went over the top of it.
I will tell you a very similar story firsthand, but I won't mention any names because I don't want to get shit. But I don't think it matters. So I was working at a very, very well-known venue in Fort Worth on the production side recently, and that has all the big country touring acts. And all the acts were the same, normal live, drums, everything, just, very, real, nothing, nothing shady going on. And then there's this young band, this young country star and one of my jobs was, I wasn't the sound guy because they have their own guys. So me and the other sound guy from the house were with those guys, sort of like, as like almost like an assistant or just doing stuff for the delays and stuff. Anyway, and by halfway through song 1, I looked, and so they had a problem where they weren't getting a vocal feed to our delays behind us. And so our guys that control that are radio and going like, we're not getting his vocals. We're not getting his vocals. We're not getting this. We're not getting that. And they're all trying to scramble and troubleshoot it. I'm going like, they're not getting vocals because there aren't any.
Yep.
And so then I heard that it even went this far as like the lighting director had mentioned very, very, vehemently, like, only light from the back. We don't have any lights coming from the front, only from the back. This was a very big sold out concert too. And that is also because it's easier to hide singing along to your own tracks. You don't see the mouths get out of sync so much. And the compression is just like squashed. It sounded like a CD. It sounded exactly like if somebody went into this gigantic system, popped in a CD or played a track off iTunes, and then the band just, would like Top of the Pops the whole time. But like, I was looking around, there's 6,000 people there, and I'm like, I don't think anybody else knows.
I had the same feeling. I'm looking around and no one knew. In fact, I started complaining to my wife and her family. Yeah. And they were like, I don't care. I'm just enjoying it. I'm like, no, my wife didn't say that, but the others did. My wife actually, I walked away first. I'm like, I'm going to take the kids and go to a playground. And then she showed a couple months later saying it just wasn't for her. But yeah, I don't think anybody in the audience cared. They were just.
Why would they?
They'll be like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't care. They fooled us. So it sounded good.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, well, we obviously have a different idea of what it was. But it was 90% of what they were doing was pre-tracked, and he was singing along to himself. And then just like every other kind of thing, like they had their parts where, the sound guy and the singer both knew, I'm going to say something here so that, he runs up his vocal track so it sounds like he's live. Hey, everybody, it's all, that can all be done. I mean, the whole show was done to click track, even the lights, everything. It was like a show in a box. Boop, there you go. Press play. These dudes are up there.
Yeah. Mick Concert.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like Mick Concert.
You can take it.
I mean, it's actually interesting because I was in Nashville about 3 or 4 years ago, and I saw a bunch of people. Everybody has the in-ear monitors and all the stuff, and that seemed normal. But everybody was playing the tracks with the band. So there's a band, but there's still all the tracks. And I was like, God, pretty soon they're just going to get rid of the band. And my friend's like, nah, that's not going to happen. And here it is.
I saw it happen.
I mean, it's actually kind of fascinating, because to me, part of what makes country music and music, when we talk about rock and roll and things that come out of all the blues-based forms of music,
right,
they're based, the part of the allure of it is the sound of the instruments. It is the inconsistencies of people playing together that make it feel human. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we love about it, is the heart and soul of it. And they basically
the energy,
suck all the heart and soul out of it and just feed you this process. It's like processed food, processed music, processed TV shows. It's like, where is the,
and there's a disingenuous vibe to that where, like, with hip hop and rap, it's like everybody already knows from the get-go. There's no need to, like, it's understood that there's not going to usually be a full band. But that's the genre of music. It's not the same thing. You're not trying to make hip hop into an orchestra, most of the time. Like you expect that, and it works that way because nobody's trying to sneak anything by you. Like, Kanye's not really playing a drum set. We all know that.
So he's also not really singing, because if you've heard his rendition of what was it, "We Are the Champions."
Okay, well, we can go all day with Kanye's, maybe not bright decisions, but I do like when he said, "All right, here's one thing I have to address about Kanye." Like, it was only 2-3 years ago where he was on Oprah. He just got diagnosed bipolar, and I've been diagnosed with that same affliction, if you will. But, this was only 2 or 3 years ago. And like, he's like telling, I just got diagnosed. And I'm like, how did this, like, you just got diagnosed? But he said this, and this is what I really, really thought was pertinent. It was that he was like, all y'all want these crazy ass beats. All y'all want these crazy ass songs, but you don't want me to be crazy to make these crazy ass beats that y'all love. So, I take all this medication and stuff, and I don't make these crazy ass beats, and y'all are like, oh, what happened to Kanye? So it is. It's an actual, I think it's a very justifiable point. It's
like, fair enough. I will grant him that.
Kanye's got to be Kanye in order to make those Kanye songs.
Yeah.
Now,
well, to be fair, crazy Kanye or medicated Kanye, they both suck.
Bohemian Rhapsody that he did? Was that the song, or was it "We Are the Champions"? I thought it was Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, it could have been Bohemian Rhapsody. It was probably Bohemian Rhapsody.
If I'm correct, I think that might be. Singers that sing really, really, really well don't want to try Bohemian Rhapsody as a song. So I don't know. Kanye was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna knock this out of the park. It's like, all right,
No, you're not.
okay. Like, I mean, I was like, and that's the thing, like, artists that are that big, like, they don't hear no.
Yeah.
Like Kanye, bad. You're talented as hell, man, for real. But like, you really want to try to do Bohemian Rhapsody? There's like 5-part harmonies that how you gonna do that? Like you get a 5 of the Kanye here, start doing the falsetto, But he tried.
Give him credit for that. He did try.
I like Kanye's stuff. I don't know. I don't know, man. Like I'm Gen X. After Tupac and Biggie, I still listen to hip hop, but like I don't know why. It's just, I guess it's my age. Then I was just like, after that, I just kind of got lost. Like.
No, same. I still go back to Public Enemy. That's where I leave it. Public Enemy was the fucking
DLC was my favorite of all time. DLC basically goes for, he wrote for everybody. He still does.
Mm-hmm.
Both those albums came out in '89, by the way. Fear of a Black Planet, and then the DLC. No One Can Do It Better. Rap was a big year for rap. '89 was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rap. We still call it rap. You could tell. Like
right.
Hip hop.
That's funny.
He's 20, and like, how we say word all the time? Our generation says word all the time, right? Well, his generation, they say bet, or they say whatever it is. I don't know. I'm old. But like, I was like, us saying word, they kind of giggle sometimes when we say that. And it's like, when we were their age, it's like the old dudes saying young blood or something. Like oh, young blood, come over here. Like we say word, they're like, listen to him with the word. They still say word.
Well, also a great Rob Lowe, Patrick Swayze movie, if I remember correctly. Youngblood.
Youngblood. Start on that one. Love Youngblood. I played hockey. I was like one of the only native Texas people that
I was
hockey.
Just gonna say, you played hockey in Texas. How did that happen?
Okay, well, it happened for a few years in the '80s. We had farm teams, so they were called Fourth Texans, and these were all Canadians. Let's not lie. No one was from Texas. Texans just showed up to drink beer with their 10-gallon hats and wink and fight. It was just like NASCAR. Try to explain icing to a Texan. Still to this day, we've had the Stars now for 20 plus years. And if you ever watch a hockey game with like Texans, half of they don't know what is icing. What is icing? Why are they stopping the game? They don't know.
And let's be honest, the Canadians you were getting were the ones that couldn't cut it in Canada. Still better than the American hockey players, but not as good as the Canadian as in their home country.
I've always wanted to ask a true comedian this, because
you want me to go find one?
Has a lot of great comedy and festivals about everything comedy, right? At least that's what I have always thought. The Montreal, all the comedy. A lot of comedians come out of Canada, but yet Canada comedy is supposed to be born out of a lot of dark and despair, and like its roots are very. I thought it was very struggle oriented, right? Am I wrong about that?
Well, I mean, just speaking from.
I'm not but I'm saying my point is like Canada doesn't seem like, except for the cold, it seems like it's not exactly like, to me, like strife ridden. So their comedy came from a weird place, because they seem pretty happy. They're like the nicest on the planet.
I think comedy writers come from Canada, and then true comedians come from daddy issues. I think that's what it is. Comedy writers come from Canada.
Well, I'm the cliche guy. I'm the musician in the band, or the rock guy that always wished he could do stand-up. And I've met a lot of stand-up guys that always wanted to be in a band. I don't know why there's that crossover, but it always seems to be.
No, I've heard that crossover a million times too. And I've been unlucky enough to do both, where I was in a band and then we got in fights, and I said, what can I do on my own? I'm not Sting. I can't sing and play. Well, fuck it. I'll talk about my dick on stage.
I don't know if you remember, you remember Rex that was in Flickerstick.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell this story. I hope you might like, I don't know. So Rex, all of us thought we were funny, but we're not. We're just dudes that think we're funny. None of us are that funny. Rex had a true knack. And he also knew a lot about stand-up. He even tried stand-up in his college years, but he saw his other buddies that were really trying to do stand-up just bomb. And he was like, those guys were way funnier than me. They got their ass handed to them. So he stopped trying at all. And so cut to, this would have been 2001. We were playing with the Cranberries at Hammerstein Volume in New York. And this would have been, end of 02. So it was a Saturday night show. And that night was Will Ferrell's last show at SNL. And so we were right down the street from 30 Rock. So one of the producers of SNL was a fan. Her husband was the singer of the Gin Blossoms. So they said, contact Flickerstick, see if they want to come over. And after they're done playing, they can come maybe get a tour of SNL and maybe go say hi to Will Ferrell. I don't know why. This is nice. So we were like, what? Yeah, we're done. I mean, we play early. We're the opening act for the Cranberries. So we did this. So we went up and they gave us like this tour. But Brandon, we had already been drinking quite a bit. So I'll go up to 30 Rock with like handlers, meet the producers. They take us up and they're doing this very gracious tour. Here's the sound studio room where, all the production happens. And then you can see out where the stage is, right? So we were about to go see where the monologue is done, except for Rex was extremely drunk. Rex escaped from the tour, and then we saw him doing a monologue to no one on the SNL stage, but like fully serious, like he was auditioning for Lorne Michaels if he was like listening, like doing his best material, but he was wasted. And so all of a sudden you hear the producer and some of the audio guys are still in the sound booth, and they're like, what is that? And I could see like, sort of like, I don't know. I could hear Rex's voice and I'm like, oh dear God. That's our guitar player. And he's in full on like 3 minutes into his set, I guess, as a comedian.
His soliloquy.
Yes. And a lot of it was great and it was really funny. The other part made no sense at all. And I was just waiting for security to tackle him at any moment. So eventually, the producer, she was like, let's go get him. And I was like, yes, let's do, please. I don't even know how he escaped from us, but he did. And so we go down and he sees us coming and he starts to run. He doesn't know where he is. And so like, we're trying to chase him down, like kind of like, Rex, come on. So, but no harm, like he didn't get kicked out. We kind of subdued him, did whatever we had to do. So we all get in the elevator. She goes, let's go say hi to Will Ferrell. And this is this guy's final show. Like, why would he want us 5 drunk idiots to like come ruin his party? We had no idea what we were getting into because she said, now there's 2 levels at the party. There's the first floor of the party floors where that's like, yeah, his friends and people.
That's Gen Pop.
The C-list or I don't know.
Yeah.
And we're going to go all the way to the real party that's like that nobody can get into. So don't freak out if you see people. And, and by then we had our taste of the good, the fame or whatever for a little bit. So we thought because we met other bands that were big that we were like, oh no, we're seasoned, we'll be fine. But we're hammered and Rex is uncontrollable. And the doors open in the elevator to somebody get on. And it's Tina Fey. Rex has an obsessive, almost unhealthy crush with Tina Fey. Worst time ever. She stands kind of right in front of him, doesn't know who we are. And she's just looking straight ahead. She says hi to the producer. We go up. And Rex has got both his hands over his mouth. I'm like, oh, this is going to be disastrous. So the doors open to this, party. And it's exactly like what she said, because the first person I see, they're waiting to get on one of the elevators or something. And it's Donald Trump and like 5 blondes. I thought it was Hugh Hefner. I was drunk. And then I was like, that's not Hugh Hefner. But the 5 blondes kind of made me go like, wait, who is that? It was Donald Trump. So then I'm like, holy shit, she's right. We're in the Big Apple. Like, of course, there are huge stars here. And so we start walking through. She's guiding us literally like a field trip. And we're just like struggling and it's like everybody from SNL's there, and then like their A-list friends, and I'm like, I've never felt more uncomfortable in my life going like, okay, we should not, like, somebody needs to call security on us anyway. So we
a
got
little
some
invasion of the
Will.
body snatchers.
Yeah, we met Will. He was very nice. He was like, hey, hi, what's going on? Hi, like, who the fuck are you? Apparently he knew us. He'd seen the show, but like he was so busy that the poor guy was just doing his best. Like, yeah, okay, whatever. Good. Yeah, great. Good to see you. Good to see you. And then there was an incident with Jimmy Fallon that involved one of our bandmates kissing him on the cheek, and then he jumped over a couch, and so we were escorted out. But the point of the story was that
you don't want to wait. You don't want to give up that band member? You don't want to say who kissed?
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was after Corey went to the restroom and then came out. Moby was the artist that night, and I hear an argument going. I'm trying to pee too, right? And so I hear what is my guitar player's voice arguing. This is what he's saying. I only hear his voice, but I know that there's somebody in the other stall or whatever in the bathroom that's causing like the other, like the person I can't hear. And there I hear, no, man, Disintegration is way, way better of an album than Pornography. What the fuck is wrong with you? And then the pause, and then I hear sort of like this voice. I can't tell what it is. And he's like, no, dude, no, I will not concede. I will not concede. And then they both come out. It's Moby and my guitar player, and they're fucking yelling at each other because Corey had a Cure pin on his lapel that said Disintegration, and Moby came over and was like poking his pin, going like, Pornography is a better album. Who are you?
Moby's wrong.
And so Corey was like, oh, really, Moby? And he's like, I didn't know Moby was a foot shorter than me. We're all short guys, by the way. And we were like, I don't know. Did you just get into an argument with Moby over a Cure record? And Corey's like, yeah, fuck that dude, man. He's wrong. He's just wrong. And I was like, okay. And then he's like, holy shit, that's Jimmy Fallon. I promised my fiance I'd kiss him if I saw him. And nowadays that sounds crazy for somebody to say. But like our lives at the time, when he said that, I was like, he's gonna go fucking kiss Jimmy Fallon in like 7 seconds. And he beelined over there and he's like, hey, Jimmy. And Jimmy looked at him, waved like he knew who he was. Corey like basically comes close to him, grabs his face, plants one on his cheek. Jimmy jumped over a couch, like literally, like not like in like I'm gonna do some physical comedy. Literally, like I gotta get away from this crazy person. I don't know what's going on. And then right after that, our teacher field trip producer lady, she's like, okay, well that's enough fun for today. Come on guys, come on, hold hands, let's go back to the elevator. And on the way out, I see Dan Aykroyd sitting at a table with, I don't know who, Don Corleone. I don't know who else is there. Like anybody you could think of. I was just like, okay, we shouldn't even be here. Like, we can't do this. So, but anyway.
Goddamn fantastic.
Rex finally got his monologue on the SNL stage. Now, to end the story, while he was going on, before she realized, like, maybe he should be not by himself in his drunken state, wandering around on the stage because security might actually tackle him. He was killing it. He was killing it to the point where the other guys that we didn't know that worked at Saturday Night Live, that knew her, of course, they were going like, wait a second, hold on. He's actually pretty fucking funny, man. Like, why don't he come in for an audition? Like this guy's killing it. And he's hammered. He's not even supposed to be on the stage. And so, like, we told Rex what happened the next day. He doesn't remember. He says he doesn't remember. He's like, dude, I did not do that. We're like, yeah, well, you say that about everything. And so later on, I don't know, a couple of days later, a week later, there was something about Rex got contacted by someone. I don't know if it was the producer lady, but it was somebody that had to do with that night. And I remember Rex going like, I think somebody's fucking with me because somebody's talking about that I should come in and do an audition to be on Saturday Night Live. And we were like, what? And he was like, we were like, well, you did an audition. It wasn't wanted. It was like, it wasn't consensual for anybody, but you did do one. Maybe they thought you were funny. and I never heard anything about it, if it was real or if he was messing with us. But there was a talk about trying to get Rex to like actually go audition for Saturday Night Live, but he wouldn't have done it even if it was, if it was legit. Because he's like, no, dude, I'm not a comedy guy. That's only when I get drunk and it lasts for like 8 minutes and then I'm just a miserable wreck after that. So can't do that. So anyway, that's my SNL story about that.
That's hilarious.
It's a fantastic story, and
Donald Trump. It's what they all look the same.
Tell Corey this. If you remember the Mecha Streisand episode of South Park, that ends with either Stan or Kyle yelling, "Disintegration's the best album ever."
Oh, man, I do. I remember that. He'll love that. Yeah. That's true.
Funny.
Moby is wrong. He has South Park. He has Matt and Trey on his side when it comes to the best Cure album.
We had a lot of well, I guess the name dropping's already well past. I've already jumped the shark on that. But my point is not to I'm not trying to do it from an ego thing. It's more of a self-deprecation thing, because we were 5 guys that were like waiters and bartenders, and then a year later getting to mingle with all these people. So we did not have the best celebrity skills. So there's quite a few stories that should not probably be told, but there was a couple of run-ins that looking back now, I'm like, oh my God, there's, I guess that's a skill you have to acquire that we didn't do. So there's a lot more, but the Moby one is sort of funny. I liked it. I thought it was
hilarious.
What are you gonna do?
I think the reverse. I think it's probably good for the celebrities to get a taste of reality now and then, because as said earlier, they with Kanye is the example, but it's most of them that surround themselves with yes men and sycophants and fawners, and probably good every once in a while for Jimmy Fallon to get molested by a guitar player.
Oh my God, I wonder if he remembers that. I don't know. I had a theory hilarious. Why when the biggest celebrities, and I'm talking like the biggest icons in the world that we all know, when they reach a level, why do they all start dressing like dictators, like Gaddafi and shit, like Michael Jackson with all his like Captain Crunch jacket? And then you have who else? Well, Elvis too. I mean, Elvis looked like a spaceman, like the general of Space Force before Space Force was a thing. It was weird. Like you could see those icons get to a level. Even Chappelle, who I'm the hugest fan of, like lately Chappelle's starting to get like some military style C's from his Chappelle show on his jackets and stuff.
He's been wearing jumpsuits, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and I had some other examples too, but it's always like this kind of like, I don't hear no from anybody, and all of a sudden I'm gonna start wearing some stuff on my shoulders and like a whip and just kind of bizarre. I'm like, how can you tell somebody dressed like that know who pays you? Like Elvis didn't hear no much, I don't think.
No, I'm trying to think of a fat joke, but it escaped me. Nah.
Oh man,
were you about to say something, Nathan?
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, what are you listening to musically these days that is inspiring you?
Man, I've kind of gone backwards. Like back in my day, we were listening to I really have. I've gone in my mid 40s. I've kind of found like Gershwin and like Coltrane and like Charlie Parker. Like I've gone into this jazz thing, but as far as modern bands, man, it's hard to say.
It doesn't have to be modern. You just answered. I mean, Giant Steps is still it's a legendary album for a reason. I mean, my God.
I agree. I think that what I've found in music, the way that I know is that when 25 years ago, when I didn't really know much about music, like, I mean, I could play guitar, I could write songs, but at a very, very basic level, kind of a very like enough to write songs and use your creativity. But that's sometimes when it works best because you know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So like the better you get at your instrument, there's a reason why people that have like jazz or music degrees and they get into the 30s, why they play in orchestras or they play jazz or they don't play 2-chord pop music because people are like, man, you know, those songs are easy, but they're so easy though. Why can't you write songs that people love like when you were 21 or 20 years old? And I'm like, I don't know, because I thought that was hard at 21. I was like, dude, I'm pressing boundaries, but I wasn't at all, like at all. I was literally like, people could relate because there wasn't a lot of like, ooh, should I go there? Should I do this? That doesn't work because that's inverted, or you know, that scale doesn't work here, or that should obviously go and go off to that kind of a tangent, or because then you just get into complicated music, and then you have an audience of like Monday Night Jazz at the Jazz Cafe at 7:30, where you're an amazing genius player, but like people find it hard to relate to you, like, you know, like So I don't know.
I got to interrupt you because again, it goes back to not giving yourself enough credit. Okay, so music should, in my opinion, first and foremost, be emotional. So if you're making an emotional connection, you can reduce it if you want to say, well, people are simple and so they like simple things. But there is a lot of clever happening on Astronauts, from hi-hat fills to a second guitar sound that's like you hear it back here. I mean, it might not be technically the most, you know, it's not Yngwie Malmsteen, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be if it's emotionally honest.
Like, simple was a bad choice of words. I guess it's more like, I guess relatable, but like, you're right on the emotional part. And this is another thing that, all right, so when you're 15 to 20, that's when I believe, like, what are your favorite albums of all time? What music made you, like, what do you, when you think back of like albums or artists that really grabbed you, like your thing, it's probably music that you heard or latched onto in your late teens. There's something in our brains of that coming of age time that, like, it might not be, you might have heard better bands later on in life, but like, there's a reason why you're still going to have those 5 albums or bands that you had when you were 17, 18 years old. And there could be many reasons, but I think one of the reasons is that, like, okay, well, for me, take an example, like Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins. I was 16 when I heard that. It's not the greatest rock record in the world, but it's a great rock record. But like, you know, that meant a lot to me. And those records around that same time meant a lot to me. Where at 32, it would be hard for any record, no matter of like the technical scale or the credibility factor, or however you wanted to try to say that it's, you know, well, it can't really be better, but, you know, like, there's reasons why this should be liked more than this, if there is that argument. There's nothing that could be done at 32 to make me like an album better than I liked those couple of albums when I was that age. And that's why I think that nobody gives a shit about, you know, Rolling Stones making their 22nd record or The Cure making their 12th record. Yeah. It's like, there's something about not knowing, like when I was saying about maybe like you don't overthink it when you're younger, doesn't mean that you're not still technically able to do stuff like we did on Astronauts, but it's like what you hit really like square on was the emotion. I think it's harder to have that passion and emotion past a certain age.
I would agree with that, but I also think that
you can't have it, but it's like, it's so raw when you're 19 and 20 that you almost can't control it. And so that kind of makes up for, or maybe even be the focal point of why people do like it. It's like they can not really, it doesn't really matter that it might be 2 or 3 chords. It's the overall sound and the camaraderie of the guys maybe you're playing with, or more importantly, it could be the time in which it was made. So like Y2K, early 2000, 2001, like that record makes people, that's a record made from that era. Just like when NWA's, first record was made in 91. Like that record has that timestamp on it where it might be appreciated by guys now that are 18, but people that were alive that were around the same age as Ice Cube and, Yella and all those guys, like we can go back to like why or Fear of a Black Planet by Public Enemy. Like you and I can go, that's how 1989 was, maybe not directly because we didn't live in the hood with them, but like we were alive and knew like the climate, like sociologically, like where we were in our growth. And I think that has a lot more to do with it than people think. But it all does go back to, when you're young, you have these, if you tap into it correctly, that raw emotion that hasn't been tainted or it hasn't been overthought that you do when you're 32. And when you're 32, you've probably got a wife and kids, or you've got other things. Doesn't mean that you're still not very creative. But I don't know if you have there's only a few years, kind of like with boxers. You can't be a badass boxer at 45. You could be a good boxer at 45. You could be a world champion 90 times over. But at 45, it's a different boxer than it was at 22.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying, but the caveat I would add is that maybe when you talk about the Stones putting out their 27th album and The Cure, I think maybe sometimes artists run out of shit to say. And that's why that's why that albums don't speak to you. Like one of my favorite bands is U2. I absolutely love them, but their last few albums have been like one gem. And then I just like,
I'm with you on U2. I heard their early stuff. I liked a lot.
It was filled with passion, like you said. And then
when you brought up trends a while back, and I'm not trying to dog on U2 because I am a fan, but more so of the early stuff. I don't think that's that controversial to say, by the way.
But it happens with any band. Like you said, the Rolling Stones, people would go see the Steel Wheels tour in '96, not for their new album, but for the catalog, the back.
They want to hear, Exile on Main Street or whatever from 1971 or whatever.
Right.
So when you said trends, here's what I find that irks me, and I think it's pretty easy to see is like when you get to a certain age in rock, like what U2 was doing their last few records was like whatever was trendy at the time, they would like. The Strokes and White Stripes were huge when they did that. Remember when U2 put out that album where it was like on an iPhone, you got that song,
not a good album.
All the song, all of a sudden they were using fuzz pedals, stripped down garage rock that emulated whatever was popular at that literal 2 year period. And then like 2 or 3 years later, when their next album came out after that, it was like, whoa, what is these bands doing? Let's get that producer, or we'll just let's tag on it. It was like the old vampires were like, come here. I need your.
It's like Amy Poehler and Mean Girls being the cool mom. Like, I'm still relatable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm always bad with that, but I see your point. Yeah, no, you're right. U2 was, they were great back in the day. They really were. I didn't realize that their weird album that they did, what was that? The second album that was Rattle and Hum, massive tour.
Yeah.
And at the time, it did bother me because I didn't really understand what the criticism was about it. But over the years, like everybody's like, why Rattle and Hum got so much crap? Because it was after, two of their greatest albums. And then basically U2 discovered the blues, or at least wanted to make a blues record after making these very, very Irish pop, rock, whatever U2 was, their sound was very their sound. Then all of a sudden it was like, let's play blues, and let's not only make a blues record, but let's push it to the American South almost. Like, kind of, I guess they thought it was an like an homage, but it was like, now I understand. It's like critics are like, man, y'all are really badass at what y'all do. And then you turn around and try to make blues music to sell to people that invented the blues.
Yeah.
So it was almost like, okay, Bono, like we already have that. But hey, you know, they wanted to do it. I didn't mind the Rattle and Hum record. It's just that I've only understood why that got so much crap years later. And I'm like, I guess they were doing that. It's like,
Yeah, I've read the interviews. They said they were trying to be fans, but
and went over to Scotland and went like, check out these bagpipes. We make bagpipe rock now. And like everybody in Scotland's like, that's awesome. Why don't you make your fucking music? Because we liked that. Why are you playing bagpipes all of a sudden?
Yep. Yes.
That's the best analogy.
That's funny.
No, it's a goddamn good analogy.
That's funny.
Well, goddamn done.
Hey, Robbie Shankar, is this a sitar? Check it out. You're gonna make a fucking sitar album. Why? You don't even barely play the sitar.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
That dude had two good-looking daughters with Nora Jones and her sister.
Yeah.
You ever see Nora Jones' sister, the sitar playing sister?
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Nora Jones is a beautiful girl. Her
I'll have to Google.
She's the one that stayed over, I guess, with the dad in India. Like she was on a lot of the like George Harrison's son plays still, you know, like she's well-known sitar player. She's drop dead gorgeous, like model type. And no offense, I mean, I not say anything bad about Robbie Shankar, but I'm like, sometimes it's like, I don't know, like I'd be surprised if Danny DeVito had two gorgeous fucking tall 6'3" model blonde walking around or whatever, just gorgeous women. I'd be like, those are DeVito's kids. It would be surprising, is all I'm saying. And like, I'm just saying, Robbie has two really, really beautiful daughters that are extremely talented too. Not just that they're just, you know, physically pretty, but they're it's amazing. Way to go, Robbie.
Well, maybe his wife slept around while he was on the road.
Maybe so. Oh man.
Stranger things have happened.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
oh, that's funny.
I'm gonna get in trouble for that one. I bet.
no, you're not.
That's hilarious.
I think we're bumping up against an hour or maybe a little longer, which is fine. We can keep going, but maybe one more question that I can think of is go all the way back to where we started this, and I go back to Bands on the Run and the idea of, I lived in Los Angeles for a while. I worked on some reality TV, and I know behind the scenes of the monster, and I think it's finally becoming a little more clear. But back then, I don't think the public was too aware of reality television. It was a new beast, and I don't think people really understood editing and narrative, how you film for 24 hours and then you distill that down to a couple minutes, and the producers have incredible control in how you're presented, who they want you to be, so that you can be yourself, but you can also be presented as a caricature of yourself. And what they did on that show is they pitted you against the band Soulcracker. You may have been insane friends behind the scenes, but it really did get set up as a good guys, bad guys showdown very clearly, like cutting to them at their most, I would say, obnoxious. And you guys were portrayed as the lovable, talented drunks. Do you want to speak to that at all? Are you okay with how you guys were portrayed? Did you ever have talks with the other bands, Harlow, Josh Dodds, about how they were portrayed, or just the idea of reality television isn't actually real? The stage is real. What you do on stage.
It's a good premise. And I have no doubt that is like, I think as reality TV progressed, I can only speak from the show that we were on. Like the only shows that I saw that were reality TV was I saw obviously The Real World, being Gen X. I mean, like we all watched The Real World. So we knew that, but like that was only for people that watched MTV at a certain age. Like the rest of the world kind of got on with Survivor, I guess, right? Like that was the first big reality show that were for not teenage.
Kicked the door open for everything.
Right. So, and we were right after Survivor. Bands on the Run was actually, nominated for whatever the reality series is, and Survivor beat us. But there wasn't, it was still very young. And the two producers that produced the show went on to do Last Comic Standing and Top Chef and Project Runway, because of Bands on the Run, that was their first one. That was their pilot show, I guess. So when they did Bands on the Run for us, to answer your question about like the editing thing, this could be, it's hard for me to answer because it could be like, you know, I could say that there wasn't any real manipulation going on with the editing as far as making bands look like the way that they were, because it's easy for me to say because we ended up looking pretty cool, or it seemed to favor us, I guess you will. But I honestly do think that was Soulcracker portrayed unfairly? I would actually say that they weren't. There's other parts of it that I would think that Soulcracker should be. I can see how they could still be, or were at the time, suspect about some of the rules. But like, you're right about one thing though. We, like, off camera, Soulcracker and us, we weren't fighting. You know, we were having drinks and laughing and joking around. And then as soon as we would leave, I'm sure their camp did the same thing that we did. We would all be like, okay, we got to figure out a way to get these guys. Soulcracker, I do think Soulcracker got a bad rap in this aspect. That you know, they did work hard, and they did do what was expected of the show, which you would think would, you know, be a positive thing. But I think that I don't know, like they really tried very hard. They did all the things that you were supposed to do, and it didn't work out for them. But I don't think they were portrayed unfairly. The way that they were was the way that they were shown. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I guess my point is that the producers, this was their first show, and reality TV was still young enough, at least in our show, that if there was a lot of manipulation, it was hard for me to tell, because I think that they were more concerned with, like, will the show work? Because the way, like, they even told us while filming it, they were like, we're kind of learning this as we go too. And I think what they meant was, like, how do we keep this interesting? Because if it's just about selling t-shirts and merch sales, that's not really interesting in itself. But they had to have some kind of a metric to, like, place bands along the line, along this strip of, like, who's in first and fourth. But, like, nobody knew about you could win the Battle of the Bands and stay on the show. We didn't know that going in, because if we did, we probably would have been even more asshole. Really,
just slacked off, knowing that the music would take care of itself.
If anybody, like, I don't sit around and watch Bands on the Run. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but you can see the first 4 episodes. That's before an elimination out of 17. Every band's on the first 4. Our game plan, we were so shocked that we got picked to be on the show, that our bar was raised very low for ourselves. Basically because we knew ourselves, and we weren't well disciplined. Musically, we did well. Like, that was our thing we could do, but, like, everything else in life was so terrible in general, that we were like, just don't get kicked off for, you know, we got 4 episodes, then they got to kick somebody off. We got to just, well, so what? We first kicked off, we got 4 episodes on this team. And then they went, okay, well, you guys suck at all this. So, but here's the thing, you win the Battle of the Bands, you not get eliminated. And we were like, wait, say what? Word? You know, so, and then we kind of were like, okay. And you could see Soulcracker and the rest of the band's going like, you did not tell us that. That was not in our contract. We have been getting up at 6:30 every fucking morning, drinking coffee, going out peddling these goddamn t-shirts and CDs to strangers. And you mean to tell me that at the end of the day, these 5 dickheads could just party, act a fool, and then every once in a while get their shit together, knock out a Battle of the Bands, and they win this whole thing? And we were like, apparently that's what the rules are stating as they go along. So that's our only strategy, not because it's a good one, but it's because that's the only one that we can physically do.
That is true. All right. Well,
Oh, that's
like I
hilarious.
said,
So that, I guess my answer is that the manipulation part was, I think, more of like the how does the show continue, and their, I would say, changing of the rules, but their addition,
yeah.
like that, that is still manipulating it. Like, I don't know. Now,
Well, and as you said,
I won't name names. I won't name names because we're all getting back to being friends again in the band. But there was a couple of guys that everybody thinks when they don't have a good episode, when you're shown as kind of not being on your best, everybody's like, "There's bullshit. They edited it wrong." Like, why do I look like a dick?
right.
That's because of them. It wasn't anything that I did. Because why they show that of me when you did all this, they didn't show that of you. So that is true to a point, but it was almost like the guys that were mad when they didn't look so great on that episode, we were all like, oh, so now it's not your fault. Now it's the editing.
Right.
So it's a weird thing. It's like, I can see how you're correct. They can make people out to be assholes if they want to. Totally 100% they can do that. But sometimes people are just assholes.
Well, that is incredibly self-aware and honest, because like you just said, most people they like to point fingers and lay blame. You're owning up to it, and God bless you for it. The God I don't really believe in, but
only showed me being a dick, which they had a lot of footage of. If they only showed me being a dick for like 90% of the time I was on that show, I'd be fucking pissed. I'd be like, oh, great. That's not cool at all. And then, but they didn't do that as far as I could tell, but I could see how that could work in other reality shows. Like,
yeah. And as you said,
maybe
you were one of the first shows, and maybe all that came later. I will grant that as they began to figure out the reality process, they realized the narratives they could drive. And
I think that they were trying to figure out how to make it work. And then maybe they put their evil cloaks on later on. I don't know. But like, I saw Last Comic Standing. But I got so long ago that I couldn't tell you if that's, if that was starting to happen or what. I have heard from reading about other people in reality TV shows that there are some that claim it totally happened. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you just go to the very first episode of Last Comic Standing, that was set up to make Ralphie May a star. And then public sympathy and empathy went with Dat Fan, and they were literally left scrambling like, we're doing this for Ralphie, and this Dat Fan kid is coming out of nowhere. I mean, they were struck sideways by it.
Well, and if you ask Soulcracker these said questions, I would think that they would say that about us. We would be the Ralphie Mays of the question if you ask that to them. Which I'm not saying that they're wrong about. I don't. I'm not saying that that's not what happened. I will say this to end this is that I have been asked a question about our show specifically from lots of people, and it still happens to this day. They'll ask like, "Hey, man, so was that real, or did you guys have to like act sometimes, or like do stuff you didn't want to do, say things that you normally wouldn't say, or like did they make y'all set up stuff to like twist the plot?" And my reaction, and this was even back then, all the way up 20 years later, is like, you obviously don't know the five of us all that well, because we couldn't barely all five agree to do anything besides play those shows. So even if they wanted to do that, even if they were like, Flickerstick, let's have a meeting. We need you guys to go. And we'd be like, what? We got to do what? I don't even know. Where are we? Where'd Fletcher go? Where's Doc? Somebody go find Dominic. Why is Corey peeing in the bushes? Like, we wouldn't have been able to get any of that together to even do their bidding if we were asked to. So maybe all the other bands were really good actors, and we were just lucky because they try to get us to do. All right, I'll say this: like when you walk into a building, we just walk into a building. They would a couple of times go, guys, our camera guy totally wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
You guys mind if y'all all five get back out of this stupid van and walk? Well, of course, then we would be dicks about it. We'd like, let's do the Reservoir Dogs walk, or like try to like make it like campy. And then they'd be like, no, just walk like normal humans,
right?
Okay. It would take 4 takes for us to get out of a van and walk into this fucking ceiling or something. And so I can imagine how hard it would be to go any further than that. Because literally it was like somebody would walk by the camera and do like one of these things, or like, I'm like, good luck. All we got to do is walk like 37 steps to that door. And it's taken an hour and a half to recreate this. So that's my point. It's like, maybe they tried and they just were like, okay, fuck these guys.
They gave up on you.
Go to the other bands and tell them to do all this crazy stuff, and they don't know that it's not going to work out for them. But they're good. They'll do it. They'll fall right in line. Flickerstick, we don't even know. We don't know if they're going to make it to Cleveland.
All right. Final question, and this is probably one you've been asked a million times, and I've tried to avoid the cliche, boring, asked a million times questions, but I don't know that I've ever read this, or I don't know that I've ever heard it, but quick answer. Where did the name Flickerstick come from?
Oh, man.
Oh, it's not a long answer, is it? Fuck.
My chair's going down. Oh. What happened eventually?
That's one way to get out of answering a question.
So, I tried. No, this chair's been broken for a while. I just knew it was going to go somewhere in this interview, and I'm like, I'm doing it right now during this question. All right. So the question, which is it's a valid question, and actually, it doesn't get asked as much as you think.
All right.
The name was something. I'll be honest. I've never really made peace with the name. I'm not going to say I hate it. I'm not going to say I don't love it. I've just kind of went like, that's what we decided on. Now, how it came about was we needed a name. We had a show booked, our first show booked, and we had no name. And we had a lot of bad choices. Now, I don't know how bad they were to have Flickerstick have won, so they must have been really bad. So, but it was literally like, we have a show this. It's like one of those band fights when you're 22 years old.
Right.
We have a show this Saturday, dude. Our buddy's gonna make posters. What are we gonna call ourselves, for the love of God, dude? You got to tell me. I can't. How am I gonna go? How am I gonna go open Windows 2 and make the fucking poster that is like one color only or whatever? So the Corey and Fletcher had come up with some more names, and it was Flicker. And then I think something was already called Flicker. There might have been a band, or I don't know, a dancing monkey named Flicker. I don't know. Corey goes, Flickerstick. How about that? And that got tossed around, and I was like, I was waving it, I was shaking it off like Cy Young. I was like, bad idea. And then they were like, come on, it's not that bad. And I was like, let's go on. Let's keep going. You know, the bitch kickers. No, we can't do that. That's crazy. Can't hold them that. And so like, we came up with the bad astronauts. That would have been cool. But
bad astronauts. I like that.
For some reason, it kept going back to Flickerstick. So then the next night at band rehearsal, our loyal poster making friend had multiple Flickerstick choices. 2 words, 1 word, all this stuff. Like he was, trying to get a job. And we're just like, and I'm like going, what? Oh no.
That was it.
It's done. They want to know what the band name is. We're going with it. And I was like, okay, I guess we're going with that. And then try saying that name, and I still have to sometimes. Like, hey, weren't you in that band? What was the band name again? And I'm like, Flickerstick. They're like, flick what? I'm like, yes, I understand. It's Flickerstick.
Flicker, please.
Yeah, Flicker Dick. All that. We know. And everybody that comes up with Flicker Dick is like, they're the first ones ever. Like,
to think of it.
And I'm like, oh, I'll make fun of the name with anybody that wants to. I'm just like, if you really think that you're the first person to say Flicker Dick,
yeah,
after we were watched by 7 million people a week back in the day, you might want to, like, I don't know, your creativity level is maybe not maybe not your thing. Play on words is not your game if you think that you came up with that. So
if that's the peak of your creativity.
Oh, I got you. I burned you. Not really, man. Not really. But yeah, that's
hilarious.
It's not really that interesting of a story.
I thought it was goddamned interesting, having been in a band and Barrett's been in band, and like knowing the fights you get. The stupid little band I was in my 20s. Yeah, we could not
What
agree
was
on a
your
name,
band-
and
what
we
was your
ended up
band
with
called?
one that we all hated. And so it just, and
What
then
was your band
obviously,
called?
what's that?
It can't be worse than Hoobastank. What was your band called?
Gethsemane.
Hey man, I like it.
It's a religious term. It was the garden that Jesus
Yeah,
prayed upon before turning himself over, before being betrayed. So it's known as a place of great pain. So our dumb joke was anywhere we're playing is a place of great pain because they have to listen to us. Just the stupidest
right
inside joke. Nobody could spell Gethsemane. People that knew what it was thought we were a Christian band. Like, oh, Gethsemane, that's Jesus. We're like, no, we're not. It was a total fuck up on our part. But so I've lived that story. And I loved it.
Catholic, I should know this. I don't know. I'm not sure.
No,
I don't know.
Thanks so much for joining us. Quick give, like I said, the crossed fingers hope is that you're going to do a one-off show. Tell everybody where they can find the new vinyl. The album is Welcoming Home the Astronauts. You can find that on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music. But is Flickerstick.com. I know you have the Flickerstick experiment on Facebook. Is there an official website that you want to plug?
There's
what about BrandinLea.com? Plug what you want to plug.
Well, he died in 1994 making The Crow, so I'm kind of screwed on that. But I don't really have my own thing. Like Flickerstick on Facebook, YouTube, Flickerstick official, and but then there is a group. There's a private group on Facebook. I don't know why it's private because we'll accept literally anybody. So that's called the Flickerstick experiment to get us not to be assholes and play again. I think that's the name of the group. I'm not really sure. That could be wrong. But now the vinyl has already. This is
first pressing sold out, right?
Here's how to promote an album. Well, we do have vinyls, but they're all sold out until further notice. We are releasing a B-side and rarities, like a bunch of new material that stuff that from the catalog that didn't make it on albums that we still think, in hindsight, we're like, hey, totally good. Don't know why we left that one off. So that's going to come out in the next, I think that's in October 20th or something. There's going to be a lot of stuff like kind of in the process over the next year. Besides that, I'm playing a show in Nashville on November 6th at the 5 spot, but that's just solo. And
there ain't nothing wrong with solo. You're a good man to listen to.
Well, man, I appreciate that, Nathan.
I've watched a couple of your either Facebook or Facebook concerts. I think you've done. I've seen you do live broadcasts. So
I did the first live broadcast were during COVID, and I did 3. They're available on YouTube and some of the Flickr stuff.
So the one I saw was with your brother. You did one with your brother.
That was Halloween last year.
Yeah.
That was the first time Fletcher and I had played together in 12 years.
Yeah. Wow.
How cool.
We had a good time. I was a little plump because of the COVID weight that everybody seems to bitch about. Man, when I saw that streaming, I was like, who is that person on stage? When I got home and I watched them, like, oh God, I got to go back to work.
Well, it worked because you don't look plump now. Now you look like Brandon. You look.
Oh man,
you're back to.
I'm happy I got to do this. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. It was our pleasure.
How fun.
You heard all those. So Barrett can be found at antargoodwin.com. He's also the musical director for the Katie Henry Band. So you can look him up at katiehenrymusic.com. And you said that the new album now has been officially pushed to January
21.
January 21. It had artwork problems. So the next Katie Henry album will come out January 21. I can be found at nathantimmel.com. My book just got its second professional review, and nice. I can't think of a quote off it, but it was raved. And I just got an email today from a book blogger who got a hold of it, who said, hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up. This is the review I'm posting tomorrow on the 28th. And she said it was one of her top books of the year so far, and that it was one of the most unique thrillers she's ever read. So that is called We Are 100. If you like to read, pick that up. And then Barrett and I will have a surprise for you in a few weeks regarding the book. But so there you go. Brandon, thank you so much. It was great talking to you, and everyone else. Thanks for watching and listening to us.
Yeah, indeed.